Hello and welcome to the Culture Blast podcast. I'm your host, Farah Nayeri, and I'm delighted to bring you another episode of our show, which a great many of you are tuning into from all around the world. Thank you. As you know, Culture Blast is a series of deep dive interviews with personalities from all cultural disciplines. My most recent guest was Ai Weiwei. Before that, I interviewed Emma Thompson, Nile Rodgers, Nan Goldin, Elif Shafak, and Wayne McGregor. I now bring you another global superstar, Charlotte Gainsbourg, actor, singer-songwriter, filmmaker, artist, and all-around polymath. Charlotte is, as everyone knows, the daughter of the musician, singer-songwriter, poet, actor, and filmmaker Serge Gainsbourg, and the actor, singer, and performer Jane Birkin. At age 14, Charlotte became the youngest person ever to win an acting award at the César, the French equivalent of the Oscars. 24 years later, in 2009, she won the Best Actress Award at the Cannes Film Festival for her performance in Lars von Trier's movie Antichrist, which shocked some audiences with scenes of violence, sex, and sadomasochism. Charlotte also has 5 albums to her name, with songs written for her by superstars such as her father Serge Gainsbourg and Paul McCartney. On her most recent album, Rest, she has written most of the lyrics herself. Here is what her mother, Jane Birkin, said about Charlotte at the time of the album's release. I always felt that looking at Charlotte was like looking into a very still pond, under which you knew there was great agitation and great conflict.
This episode of Culture Blast is sponsored by Ingridsdotter, a new Swedish design brand named after my mother. Influenced by the upbringing in the Swedish forest, I strive to produce iconic objects with outstanding beauty and performance that respect our environment. The objects, created by the most brilliant in the industry, are found in some of the finest restaurants in Stockholm and homes in Sweden and are made to last for generations. To find out more, please visit ingridsdotter.com.
Charlotte Gainsbourg, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and joining the pantheon of artist guests of Culture Blast. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be there at a distance, but still.
Charlotte, this coming fall, you're planning to open the Maison Gainsbourg, your family home, and the home of your father, Serge Gainsbourg, on the Rue de Verneuil in Paris' 7th arrondissement. Why have you decided to open this museum, and what exactly are visitors going to see?
So it's not ready, and it won't be ready for the fall we're keeping. We're late, as usual, but I mean, for that kind of project, surprises and delays. So we're hoping it'll be at the end of the year. He died 31 years ago, and I wanted to keep his house as it was. I think at the time it was a way for me to refuse his death and, keep everything frozen. Everything that was in the fridge, the food outside, everything, as if he was going to come back. So I have brothers and sisters. I have, on my father's side, I have a sister and 2 brothers. I asked them if they wanted to join me in this project, but we're not very close. We haven't been brought up together. So they took little things their memories, even with those pieces missing, it was still so strong. The place was so, as it
powerful.
Was. Yeah, very, very powerful. So, during those 30 years, I have had episodes where I tried to make it a museum. François-Henri Pinault and Jean Nouvel were trying to help me And Jean Nouvel had a crazy project. It was wonderful. He wanted to open the house, but inside a glass box that looks very much like his work. But it was too expensive. And then I freaked out because that was maybe 15 years ago. And at the time, a film was being made on my father. An exhibition was getting prepared. A book also with all his manuscripts. And so with all these events happening, I suddenly wanted to keep him for myself a little longer and thought I'm not ready to share this. It's the only remaining thing that is still a little secret, that's still my secret. I used to go there, to be on my own. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to visit the house entering, but it's so small that we've had to make passages through the outside also. You can go in, but you can't really go in the kitchen, but you can still see everything. The visit of the house is only about half an hour and with only 5 people at a time. So it's it has to be very well organized. But I was aware that it might be a bit frustrating having gone all that way just for half an hour. So we found a place in front of the 5 bis Rue de Verneuil, and that'll be the place where there'll be a sort of little museum about his life and going through important things, and then a little coffee place and a little boutique, and so that it'll look like a proper museum.
And so this house was your home until the age of 9 when your parents, Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin, separated. Can you take us back to your memories of that place and sort of describe the atmosphere? I understand your father had his grand piano in the salon and many precious objects, and there was black felt wallpaper, and you and your sister Kate were not really allowed there in case you broke things. Can you speak a little bit about being in that house as a little girl?
I had 3 period of time with this house, with my father. Yes, the first 9 years were with Kate, my sister, in a nursery room. In fact, that he rented because it wasn't part of the house. There was a hole in the wall, so a proper door, and it did seem like it was part of the house. But weirdly enough, when my mother left him, he tried to buy that little nursery room and they refused, so he had to give it up. And it meant putting bricks and closing the door, which was so shocking. And until today, I thought that he wanted to close that door, that it was his decision. And my mother said, no. In fact, he wanted to buy the nursery, but he couldn't. So anyway, I continued to go there, of course, but without Kate. Kate at that time met her real father, John Barry, and was going away to see him in New York quite often. And and my father took me over the weekends with a stepmother, Bamboo, that I adored. She was only 12 years older than me, so she was like a big sister, taking me in many places and taking care of me. So that was the second part of the life Rue de Verneuil. And then the third part was just before his death. I was in a very bad crisis, bad romance, ending romance. He saw what state I was in and invited me to live with him again. He gave me the key. No, he was about to give me the key and he died 2 days later. So it was such a shock that I had these 3 but the first
moments.
Yeah, three moments and 3 perspectives of different lives. So the first one was not seeing them very often, both my father and my mother, because they had a very eccentric life, eccentric going into nightclubs and all that night scene of the 70s in Paris. Very happy. I really saw my parents having fun. That was the thing that I think is such a treasure for me today, is that, first of all, they really wanted me. So, in French you say un enfant de l'amour.
Child of love.
A child of love. That was for sure. Going up in the morning, my parents coming back from nightclubs, just saying hello, and we went off to school, and often my mother would pick us up because they weren't at all workaholics. So it was, she had shoots here and there, but when it was outside of Paris, very often she'd take us with her. And then there was Normandy, which was her house, because the Rue de Verneuil was very much my father's house. Even when she was there, it was his decoration, his furniture, his way of putting things.
But I mean, I would like you to describe just briefly what that living room of your father's was like, the one that was quite dark and papered in black.
Yeah, well, it was with feutrine, so it's a fabric that absorbs noise, really. The whole house was covered in black. Very elegant tiles on the floor, and then going up, carpeting that he bought at Higgins, which was an antique store, but every single piece was chosen and you couldn't move. He was so maniac that you couldn't move an object. He saw. When my mother was living with him, there were fewer objects. It didn't look like a museum yet. He became more of a collector, and with a lot of objects everywhere. So I would sit on the floor when I came for the weekends and, have my little space that I knew I wasn't putting him off. I was always on the floor, in fact, but it was the space I had. Mm-hmm. Because he didn't want me to learn the piano, because what he said was that it was so traumatizing learning with his father, because his father was so strict. He didn't want me to go through that suffering. But I really wanted to start, so my mother understood that, and I started when we left, and then I was able to come back and show him what I was learning. And it did give, I think, Charlotte Forever, that single we made, was from a piece that I was playing at home for him. But I was never on the big Steinway. I was on the mechanic piano. But it was great. It was one that he got in the 80s, I think. He would record himself. It was a piano cordaire. Mm-hmm. You could record on a tape, and then the piano would play on its own with his touch. So it was incredible. And he would go through new music, new pieces that he was composing, and then asking my mother, Bambou, Philippe Lerichaume, who was working with him, and me. And at the time I was 10, and he would ask me what were my preferences. It was so generous of him to include me in his work.
I mean, you have so many privileged moments and memories in that home.
So many.
Of course, most of which you can't share with the general public, but I think that everyone...
What I did for the museum was, and I hope it'll work well, but I did a recording of the whole house the way I saw it as a child. So people will be able to understand my point of view, and then hopefully we can invite other people to do that same recording, but with their point of view. So it'll give a new life for the house, in the following years.
I mean, I think it will be an absolutely massive success. Charlotte, your father was an extraordinary man, a poet, singer-songwriter, director, actor, aesthete. He was also in public a provocateur, projecting an image of himself as someone who led a dissolute life and who had a close relationship with you. Can you speak about this dual personality that Serge Gainsbourg had?
I can't everybody has many personalities. He just pushed it. He needed the provocation. Being so shy, he always told me that with his physique at the beginning, with women, it was very hard for him to be convincing. And suddenly, much later on, he became very successful with women and very, of course he had the charm he had, but he was so insecure at the beginning that it's not to say that he wasn't sweet. He was very sweet, but he needed to be acerbe, to be, to cut things. I don't know what.
Yeah, his spirit. And
exactly. So with the shyness and the fact that he had to be drunk on TV, if not, he was so nervous he couldn't deal with it, made him make many mistakes. Well, I don't find them mistakes personally, because at the time it was embarrassing for me as a kid, but today I cherish those moments because I feel that that's also part of stuff that we would need today, and not condemn.
It was basically covering up a lot of vulnerability.
Yes.
Reserved. He was very reserved.
And with his body and his physique, it was something he needed to hide, and so. I don't know, but it was part of his art also. The provocation was not only the show-off, moments on TV or on stage. It wasn't really that. It was also, he was extremely respectful, extremely polite, and people who have known him, especially taxi men, and he would invite people all the time, and so he was extremely elegant, and never vulgar, just grossier. Grossier is very different than vulgar. Crude.
A little crude, yeah.
So all of these different aspects of his personality are really, you can't take one and throw the other. They're all part of who he was.
I understand, but the result is that he's very much misunderstood, and sometimes he even encouraged the misunderstanding by making the recording with you, Lemon Incest. All these people went off thinking, oh gosh, why is he shooting this video with his young daughter? What's going on? He would sometimes, I guess, encourage this image, which doesn't really correspond to what you were just describing, of someone so incredibly respectful and discreet.
Well, but the thing is, I wasn't shocked, and I was the first one who could have been shocked by the song. The lyrics are very clear, in French, of course, not the chorus, but the lyrics say the love that, the love is so pure, and the love is the love that we'll never make together. It's not a long time ago. I was able to sing the song without him, but
yeah, you did
still sing it on stage. And for me, it's the most beautiful song he wrote. For me, I cherish the song. I understand people being shocked by the chorus, but what can I say? It was a big deal at the time, and it was part of what he enjoyed. So I can't say that he was surprised by the reception of the song. And then, of course, he did many other stuff, like burning the 500
franc bill on TV.
And that was also part of his character, and he couldn't not do it. It was, it was...
I mean, he was basically saying that the tax man is taking half my money, and so he burned a 500 franc bill in half, right?
Well, it wasn't half. At the time, it was more like 75%.
Oh, 75%, yeah.
But he was just making a point.
To be honest, I'm a few years older than you, but I kind of feel like I grew up with you, and I grew up in France at that time, and I mean, I wasn't shocked. I knew this was a provocation.
Also, people loved it at the time. We were not prude like today. We've gone really a step back. At the time, there was no fear of saying stuff out loud. You were not going to be cancelled the way you are today. So he took advantage of that. It's very interesting to go back to these years, because of the museum we're doing. I'm going through all his life until his death, and it's so rich and so creative. And he had a very short life, but very dense.
Definitely. And so you've spoken about the drinking on other interviews, and I was wondering how you felt about it, because in one other program, I think you were saying that sometimes you would, be scolding of him or try to hide the bottles. I mean, I guess the drinking did disturb you as a little girl.
I don't think it did help me not to drink myself. And and we had other problems that kept me out of drugs too, but that wasn't my father. So I was, in a sense, I was very well brought up, because I knew what I shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Not when I was little, but later on, I felt like a cop trying to, go quickly in the minibar to take all the bottles out, and then he was very often drunk, and I had to deal with it. But he was not dangerous. He was a very sentimental drunk. So he was holding my shoulder to get out of a restaurant, that kind of stuff. But I was so used to it that I was never complaining. It's just before he died, we did a trip together. That was the only time I was so mad at him that I closed my eyes and went to sleep on the plane coming back from Barbados. And he had been so good there, and, only having one cocktail. And I mean, he was begging for this one cocktail a day. And then I fell asleep, and he was completely drunk when I woke up. And I was so mad. But in fact, he was already ill, which meant that a little amount would make him drunk. So it wasn't, and it was on a plane. So of course you get drunk much quicker. So anyway, I came back and I was furious, but like I don't know, like a grown up with a little boy. And he was very sweet about it, and I wasn't traumatized. It was difficult but he, I've heard stories of drunken parents who are very violent. My father was never violent. So it was just a matter of him crying a lot and going to a Russian restaurant and crying over Yiddish mame and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, he was an extraordinary character.
He was.
And I mean, people who lived in France or who are French, I include myself in that category. I mean, the affection that we have for Serge Gainsbourg is sort of infinite.
That's what makes the museum possible today, is that I can feel that people are still so in love with him, so in love with those years, his presence on the...
Oh, yeah.
So I feel that they'll be so happy to go in. For foreigners, it's much more what you've talked about, the provocation and the scandalous character that he was. Sometimes people see that, or they see only Melody Nelson, or they see only Je t'aime moi non plus. In France, we're lucky enough that we have the whole picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the other parent that you have, equally extraordinary. Your mother, Jane Birkin, is also a 20th century icon, a legendary beauty, actor, singer, performer who stunned audiences in Antonioni's Blow Up in 1966, and of course famously has a Hermes handbag named after her. She too initially had a public image as this tall, beautiful, sexy partner of Serge Gainsbourg, which maybe didn't do justice to the fact that she herself is a highly intelligent, articulate artist of great depth and talent. And that definitely comes across in your recent documentary about her, Jane by Charlotte, which came out last year, and it had me sobbing uncontrollably at the end.
Oh, that's sweet.
It's very moving. Can you tell us a bit more about the real Jane Birkin, and then we'll move on to discussing you?
No, don't. But I was so happy to be able to do this film. It was difficult at the start because I didn't explain what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I just asked her if I could film her on tour. And I was living in New York at the time. So the distance made our relationship much more, not difficult, but just distant, of course.
Yeah.
And the moments we had together were rare. So it was a question for me of just getting close and keeping close. And she understood that. But then I did this first interview where I went straight into very personal questions, maybe a conversation we've never had before. And she really hated it. So we stopped for 2 years. And after that, being able to be in an editing room, looking at her so close, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to look at her, to touch her, of course, but take photographs and be very intimate. So the editing was incredible, an incredible moment. And then showing the film and understanding that it was touching for other people was such a surprise. Yeah. It was really a very, very special project that took a long, long time. I was relieved because I felt I had such a responsibility with her. It's a wonderful, wonderful memory and time we spent together, and I cherish that film. But as the mother I had, there are also, I feel, more than 3 or 4. She has had different lives. Kate was born 4 years before me, and she was the child of John Barry. And my mother was so young, she was 19. Then this life with my father, doing a lot of funny films. She was wonderful in these films, but she felt that people were not taking her seriously enough. And with the music, it was always with my father, or with my father behind her. So I think that when she left for Jacques Doyon, who was director, she was entering a world that she had never come close to. Well, maybe in Blow Up, but not as an actress. She wasn't, or what she would feel was a serious actor. And she became that serious actor thanks to Jacques Doyon. And she had suddenly many years in films and theatre with Patrice Chéreau, and she suddenly was an actor that was, taken seriously and continuing the music. And she always says that the lyrics that my father wrote after they split were the most beautiful ones, because of course with the pain and the suffering, it's true, the songs are really incredible. Yeah. And then she split. They separated with Jacques Doyon, and she had another life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of charity work that she had started when Lou, my little sister, was born. She was already doing that, but it became so much a part of her life. And then today she's still touring, and I know she's had many, many sufferings, and the death of my sister. I mean, she's had an incredible life, in fact.
But the thing is, it's very lovely to see a woman, an incredible woman, an intellectual, a person with a great mind come into her own as a woman, as an intellect, as an actor. And you kind of bring that out even more. You know, your film is an homage to who your mother really is.
Because very often she would hide, and still today she hides behind the lyrics of my father. So being very respectful of, the reason she's there was thanks to him. And she's always thanking people around her. But she is incredible. And she was, of course, a muse for my father, but not only a muse. I mean, she sort of dictated his way of his style, his Repetto shoes with no socks, the jeans, the beard, unshaven, and that sort of shaggy style was completely hers and her input. So I hope in the film I was able to show also the eccentricity, the English madness that she has. She's a real character.
So, Charlotte, we are going to now move on to talking about you. I mean, as a child, you measured yourself up to your parents. I believe you said unfavorably. You felt less beautiful than your mom, less talented than your dad. You went through some insecurities, which, of course, all children have. Yet, I mean, I think you clearly are a combination of those two individuals. And in an interview, I heard you say you don't feel you're an actor, you don't feel you're a singer, and that's fine. And again, I felt like that was another way of saying I don't really measure up to my mother and father, but that's fine.
Exactly. I've come to terms, well, sort of, because sometimes it's still, it's still difficult to feel that you have a value, but I think I was less embarrassed when I was very young, because when I started at 12, I didn't know who my parents were. I knew their work and I was listening to everything they were doing, but I wasn't aware of the awe that other people and the success that they had, because also my father was very successful close to the end. I mean, the 10 last years of his life. So anyway, to be aware of his genius, that came quite late, and I was able to enter into cinema. I mean, do films and do music without asking myself too many questions and not being too ashamed. I was already in when I started questioning my talent or my value. I already had a foot inside cinema, and music was harder because it took me 20 years to go back. It's easier now because I write my own lyrics, and that gives me the idea that only I could do it, even if it's not great poetry, it's still what I have to say.
Yeah. Well, I think it is, actually. I think it is. I think you are a very good writer of lyrics. I was on Spotify this morning looking up the lyrics of your songs, and they're very beautiful. You are a poet in French and in English. So I think that, but it's, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
But it's very difficult when the bar is so high up and you've put your father on such a pedestal, and with reason. It's very hard to not compare yourself. Of course you shouldn't. We're all different and all of that. But once you're trying to work, the comparison comes so often. And with films, being an actress is easier because of the projects, because those don't compare. They don't compare in the same way. But the physical part was a nightmare for me, and, well, still is in a way. I accommodated myself being the age I am, of course, but it's still sort of a frustration of not being who I would like to be.
Well, who would you like to be?
No, but already my mother used to say that she was embarrassed having the physique that she had, and I can't really believe that, but still she said that because she said that her mother was so elegant and she was like a Hollywood beauty, and so okay, but
yeah.
I find that it's very difficult when you have such a beautiful mother, and also my stepmother was incredibly beautiful. So the problem we had in this family was that the aesthetics were so valuable. That I really regret.
I think, it's also a product maybe of your father and his generation, and the fact that female beauty was just such a huge thing.
Yeah.
And I think this whole issue of women and self-image is really something that I hope that with time will get resolved a bit more.
Well, I'm not sure, because I thought when I moved to New York, because I had to get away from my sister's death, and I went there with my girls because my son didn't want to come. So they were, especially my 12-year-old, she was straight into the American culture, and it was so much about physique, and it was so much the les réseaux sociaux, social media, and my God, I think it's worse today, because if you're not in those canon de beauté, if you don't have boobs, if you don't have a very small waist, I mean, all the codes are so strict, and you can't look the way you are. I think it's much worse today. Top models at my time, with Kate Moss, and I mean, beautiful, beautiful women, but all different, and not, I don't know, the marker is so dull today. It's so, dull. It's so monotone. Yeah, it's so uniform. There's no fantasy. Enfin, it's boring.
Yeah. No, but it's also, a problem, isn't it? I don't know how.
But I thought that with all that revolution of women and the voices coming out, and I thought that the great path would be to not be these sort of bimbos, to not put that forward, and on the contrary. So I don't know what we're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you completely. But I also disagree with you, because I think that, everyone knows you have an identity and a personality that are exclusively you. When you say the word or the name Charlotte in France, everyone knows who that is. And it's not because you are the daughter of, it's because you are who you are. People idolize you really as all kinds of different things, as a singer-songwriter, as an actor, as a performer, a style icon. People really, they really adore you. And so I was just, wondering, how did you do it? Because you have these two huge, titans as parents.
Yeah, I don't see myself as... a lot of people have said that they grew up with Les Frontés, and being my generation, Les Frontés, and so films that have marked big steps inside a life of being a teenager and then a young woman. So maybe that counted, but style, yes, I have my own, but I don't feel that it's. I pinched things from my parents and other people for sure, but it's not, than I do with the way I am. I look like a guy. So I've had to find, things to wear that.
I don't think you look like a guy, but anyway.
No. But anyway, I don't live with this idea that I mean something, and sometimes it's I get vulnerable, but at the same time I think it's a way of protecting myself also. It's not fake modesty. It's if someone comes to talk to me in the street, they will talk about my parents. That's the way it is. So I've learned to just be very accepting those kind of compliments that It's as if people come to me and they celebrate my whole family.
Yeah, sure. And another way in which you've been dealing with things better is that I believe when you were younger, you were incredibly shy, I guess, like your dad was, and incredibly private. And it was really hard for you to, speak in public, let alone perform in public, sing in public.
Yeah,
all of
I
that.
come from that shy country seems very far away, but sometimes I've had characters to play that were shy characters, and it's so easy to go back into that mode. But I remember just the nightmare of getting into a room and just looking at my shoes. And when I started living with Yvon, who I'm still with today, he said at the beginning I would never look into someone's face. I was looking away at windows. It was so hard to connect.
Yeah.
And yes, it was, of course, my personality, but I think once my parents split, we had to deal with paparazzis. When they split, it was paparazzis in the hotel, in trees, across the room. It was horrible. But then the nerves of going on TV, going live, everything was just nerve-wracking. And
yeah.
It went away, I think, thanks to my children, little by little.
Yeah. And also been in films like Lars von Trier films where you've had to expose yourself very much. And I just wondered how you overcame the shyness for that.
I think that's all I wanted. And that's all I would want today, is to be able to be extreme. In characters, to be able to have someone that pushes you in those directions, and also being lost and, trying all kinds of expression. He was so demanding, and it was such a revelation to be under his direction.
Gosh.
Because he would make me explore things, and being quite direct. So yes, of course, put your shyness away. But then it was also there was a lot of pleasure in revealing as much as I could about myself. And I think a lot of actors are shy. It's not incompatible. On the contrary, I think it's, for someone who's shy, that's all we want, is to be taken out of our shell. And as an actor, that's what you can do.
With this ring I need white follow my body, could tie the end down.
So let's move on to the subject of your music. It's a very important part of your life and career. And I believe you have another album in the works. It took you a while to build up the confidence to write your own songs and to go on tour, as we've just discussed. And yet, as the New Yorker magazine wrote, few humans are as genetically equipped to project chic intelligence in song as Charlotte Gainsbourg is, which is a high accolade from high places. Yeah, can you talk about that new album and, how much you like music?
The thing I love is that I miss it so much when I do a lot of films, and then doing a lot of music, then I miss I miss the films. So it's just wonderful to be able to hop from one to the other. So yes, I miss touring also, which is such a surprise for me, because it was always difficult to start with. It was very difficult for the first two tours were hard.
And so this new album?
This new album is not done. I'd say 45%. The thing is, I keep going in and then pulling back because I have a film, then going back in. So it's always it takes more time than if I was just mainly focused on that and only that. But the good thing about it is that I'm able to take some distance, see what is still worth it. And the only thing is that when you write lyrics 6 months ago, they're probably not good enough for you when you go back to them. And because I don't feel that I'm a poet, I just feel I have stuff to say at the present, and that easily goes away.
I see. And what about fashion? Because, I mean, whether you like it or not, you're definitely a fashion and a style icon. I mean, a lot of women look up to you in the way you dress and the way you look. And of course, a lot of men, I've got, a lot of friends who say, oh, lucky you, you're interviewing Charlotte Gainsbourg. So there's, I mean, I know you don't think you are, but you are a style icon. So I just wanted to know how much you liked, being a fashion model for brands and doing that kind of thing.
It's like a recreation. It's, I don't take it as a job because very often it's to go to a fashion show is not work. To go and do a photo shoot is not really work for me. I mean, compared to being in a studio recording or being on a film set. So it's sort of having fun. And then, of course, red carpets and stuff like that. That's not work. I don't feel that I'm good at it at all, but I love dressing up. And the first person who took me there was my sister Kate, because she made me dress up for her first photo shoots. And I remember our first photo shoot together, she took haute couture, dresses haute couture that I had never worn before, of course. And she put me in very extreme situations in the cold in Brittany and stuff like that. So we were always having a lot of fun. And then I met Nicolas Ghesquière and started working with him and being friends and, mixing friendship and work. Yeah. And that was so wonderful because he would take my own style. At the time I had jeans that I couldn't take off and boots that I wouldn't take off. So he would adapt to my style. And then he left. And so I met Anthony Vaccarello before he was in Saint Laurent. And suddenly this friendship started, and I loved what he did for his own brand. And then the fact that he entered Saint Laurent was suddenly so, I mean, they offered for me to enter the house, and it was just wonderful because I hate shopping. I don't like fashion. I don't like looking for fashion. I feel very, very privileged because I can find everything in one very chic store called Saint Laurent. Yeah.
Lucky you, Charlotte.
Yes, I know. Lucky me.
Yeah. Grief is one of the greatest challenges that all of us human beings face, and one from which there's sadly no escape. Of course, you experienced it at a young age. You were saying you lost your father when you were 19, and then there was the passing of your sister Kate, which you were referring to also. Even though it's a dark and scary subject, it's one that you tackle head on in your songs and in your writing. And I just wondered whether you had any lessons, or not lessons, but, advice for the rest of us who are grappling with grief?
Ooh, no. That's the difficulty, is that there's no relief. And the thing is, I realize that everybody has their own way, and it's I went through my father's death in a very different way than my sister's death. My father, I was crushed, wanted to die, didn't, but I was at the beginning of my life, and It was as if I had lost my legs. So when I met with Yvan only a month later, he started just holding my hand and dealing with that grief with me. Never saying, okay, now enough. So I kept the Rue de Verneuil. I went there. Going there was just such weird feelings of going back to when my father was alive, and then I had to go out of the house and go back to reality. So all these years, I think my children, my son, in fact, when I was in delivery. Do you say this? Delivery?
Yeah, when you were delivering a baby?
My son, Yvan said my face changed. I went from death to life. Yeah. And so I think that was, of course, a huge help for many, many things, but for that sadness, for sure, my children helped. But I was still not dealing with reality. With Kate, it was so accidental, and so we were so unprepared. It was so traumatizing.
Yeah.
That I couldn't stay.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I had to leave. I didn't have that survival instinct with my father. I had it with Kate.
Yeah.
Because I was putting my own family in such a difficult. I was pulling them with me. My father, I didn't listen to his songs until now. I don't listen to his voice. I don't look at pictures. I don't look at films, because it puts me back in a sadness. They don't know how to respond.
Yeah.
And so talking and writing that album about her and about my father was something I needed to do.
Fantastic. Charlotte, your birthday is coming up this month,
yes.
So happy birthday
Thank
in
you.
advance. You're a young woman,
Of
and you've
course.
accomplished more than most people manage in a lifetime, or even more than one lifetime. When you look back on your life and career, do you get a sense of relative satisfaction now, or do you have the kind of sense again of slight insecurity, and do you have a need to do more? What else is left for you to do?
I want to do more. I feel that I'm learning about acting. It's the fact that I feel confident now to do something wrong. I don't care about doing something wrong today. And it's something I was so cautious about and so embarrassed about before, that now are my good years to come. For not saying that I'll act well, but I'll take a lot of pleasure doing it, because I know that you have to explore being bad, trying to do too much and then come back, and that's what the work is about for me. And I was always very cautious, being so scared of going over the top. I would do the minimum. But it was my fault. It was just because I was not daring. With Lars, of course, I had to dare. And I don't feel completely liberated today, but I know what I have to do. And so I want to have more parts. And sadly, being my age, you have less parts. And
really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because you look so youthful.
No, but I still have parts that, that are close to the age I am. And it's not, I wish I had felt that way when I was in my 30s. Even in my 40s I was already happy with the acting. So.
But you're only 50. You're only 51.
50, nearly 51. It's horrible. It's a horrible age for a woman. It's just I used to think that 40 was terrible. Growing up, you think, 40 is like close to death. And no, now 40 was great. I just had a kid.
But just think of a man. No, but think of a male actor of 51.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Well, he's not going to be sitting there beating himself up, Charlotte. So I think, we have to change things. I was talking about it with Emma Thompson, and she was saying the same. The whole ageism in film, that needs to be,
Well, yeah, I had an agent. An agent said to me, well, oh, you're touching 40. That'll be down the hill for you.
What, 40?
40. It was horrible. So no, I agree. We have to fight for parts and everything, but it's not yet there. So they're hard to find. And very often there are so many actresses, so many incredible actresses that there are not enough parts. And also a big deal for us in France is that the movie industry is just not in a good state. So, of course, there's TV now and we can do series, and for actors it's wonderful, but it's not the same. We have to adapt to a completely new world. I know that American actors have started a long time ago, but the French actors are starting only now.
No, I mean, it's something that someone such as you and people like Emma Thompson, you have to kind of make or produce movies, and there should be women directors, women producers, scriptwriters. I mean, I don't want to be too much of a feminist about this, but really it's women who have to lead the way, because it's still male dominated. And so to me, it sounds ridiculous that you should have a hard time getting parts. To me, that's totally ridiculous, but,
Well, yeah, but I'm not writing the scripts. If I was able to write, I'd love to direct maybe another documentary, maybe a feature film, but I'd love to continue, but I don't know if I will. So yes, of course, women write for old women, please.
Oh, you're not an old woman. Let me set the record straight. You're a young woman, and we are looking forward to many, many more decades from you of great work. Charlotte Gainsbourg.
Hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking part in this program. You've been wonderful, and I thank you for your sincerity.
No, thank you. It was lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, my pleasure, and I wish you the very best with the opening of La Maison Gainsbourg in Paris later this year. Thank you so much, Charlotte.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
A huge thank you to Charlotte Gainsbourg for accepting my invitation to Culture Blast. If you liked this episode and the ones that came before, make sure and subscribe. That way you'll never miss a show. And share the link with everyone in your entourage so they can listen too. And finally, give us a review. This podcast would not exist without the great Karina Pierre-Rochard, its co-founder and executive producer, and without the great Ben Eshmaid, who produces this podcast so wonderfully. I will be bringing you another great guest very, very soon, so do stay tuned.